everyone, and welcome to My Brain is a Wonderland, the podcast for neurodivergent women and the people who love them. You're here with your host, Emily, and today we are on the second episode of our 4-episode series discussing the female autistic traits listed in the book Unmasking Autism by Dr. Devon Price. If you haven't listened to the first episode, I encourage you to go back and listen to that first one. There's going to be 4 different episodes because Dr. Price divided all of the female autistic traits that they'd identified into 4 different categories: emotional, psychological, behavioral, and social. The first episode was the emotional traits, and this episode is going to be the psychological traits. And I just want to preface this by saying I have not read the book. I don't really know what the book is about. I guess it's about unmasking autism. I have heard many great recommendations about it, and it has really good recommendations on Amazon. But I was on one of the neurodivergent boards on Reddit, I forget which one, and someone posted the list from their book, and that's what kind of led me down this rabbit hole. And I just wanted to talk about these traits because a lot of people as in doctors, discuss or say that female and male autistic traits are different. They display differently. They say that oftentimes for ADHD, and I think a lot of different disorders. But they don't often say what the differences are, or put it into something really tangible. I've heard a lot of, well, boys like trains and girls don't. Well, I actually love trains and buses, and I've realized that growing up in London around a lot of public transportation, I'm obsessed with timetables. I could tell you timetables of a lot of the buses that are in my town that I currently live in Florida. So I don't think that's true, and I think a lot of these quote-unquote autistic traits for men and then for women are actually based on like really silly stereotypes. And I think we need to start kind of looking at the traits that we can really nail down, whether that is to do with social conditioning or something innate. I really want to get into what those traits are. This isn't going to be a discussion of what men's traits are when you're autistic, because honestly, I don't really know what they are other than like the stereotypes. He likes trains, da-da-da. And before we get started, I just want to encourage all of you listening, if you haven't already, and I know there's people listening who haven't already, please, wherever you're listening, just mash that 5-star review. It really helps get my voice out there and helps me to reach other people. On Spotify, it's really easy. You just have to smash that 5-star button. You can do it on Apple Podcasts too. And if you choose to, you can leave a written review, which I really love to read. All right, so let's get started. So this is, like I said, we did the emotional traits. Now we're doing psychological traits that present in females who have autism. So the first one is reports a high degree of anxiety, especially social anxiety. I absolutely relate to this. My anxiety, especially since I've, become an adult, has gone through the roof. My mother-in-law, actually, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to her about this, and she asked me, well, has it gotten worse? Over the years, I've known her for like 17 years, and I said it has, but there's 2 things I think that have affected this. First of all, when my mother-in-law met me, I was in college, I was an exchange student. It seems crazy to say now, I was dealing with a lot back then. I was in school, I was in another country, I was meeting a lot of people that I didn't know, experiencing new life things, but it's nothing compared to being an actual adult. If you're out there in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever, going, man, life seems harder than it was when I was in college, because a lot of people say it gets easier, and certain aspects do, but there is nothing like managing a household, your bills, you're feeding yourself, feeding a family, socializing, staying on top of communicating with direct family. I have 2 dogs. I don't have children, but anyone who has pets, especially if they're needy, I have 2 shelter dogs. We didn't get them as puppies. They're not trained very well. They're very needy and they require a lot of stuff. And so that's something that I think has increased my anxiety as I've gotten older, is that my life is just more difficult to manage. I have a full-time job right now, but I'm also in grad school getting my master's degree. And I'm managing this podcast, right? I'm doing this. And so there's just a lot to do. And I think people think, naturally over time, anxiety dissipates. And I really, if that has happened for you, bravo, I'm so happy for you because I wish mine would. But for me, a lot of my anxiety comes from having to do a lot and engage a lot in society instead of shutting myself in a cold, dark room, right? Which in college, I think a lot of people think like, oh, college is so hard. It is. I failed one of the years that I did in college. It was very difficult. My executive function or dysfunction was just off the charts. But I didn't really have to think about bills too much. I was getting a student loan at the time. I wasn't in a serious relationship until like the second year of college. I didn't have pets. I didn't have a job for most of college. I did during my third year. I didn't own a home. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't have loans that I had to pay back, right, until after college. I didn't have a credit card. There were just a lot of things that I didn't have to think about. A lot of people in college, you get fed at the local food hall. You don't have to cook food. There's a lot going on there, and that has definitely increased my anxiety. Just having to engage with so many things that are unexpected. Something that just came into my head. I hate people I don't know in my home. I absolutely hate it. My home is sacred. Even people I kind of know that I want to be friends with, it's always an ordeal. And one of the things I absolutely hate dealing with is workers in my house. So plumbers, electricians, pest control, whatever, contractors, whatever it is like, my anxiety the night before will be just off the charts. And then that whole day, I try to get them to come early at 8 or 9 a.m. And I try to have my husband here to deal with it. But the whole thing is such an ordeal. I do not like it. And that has gotten worse since I've gotten older. Because I think I have to be in charge of it. Now I own my own home. It used to be, when I was a teenager or a kid, my mom dealt with that. And I've had a bad experience with, a plumber, which I think I might have spoken about before. Maybe I'll do a whole episode on it, but absolutely terrible experience where he shouted at me, threatened me in my own home, and I just cannot even, I almost refuse now to have workers in my home without my husband here, because it is so horrific in my anxiety and my experience of it. And then the second part is it says especially social anxiety. That is absolutely true for me. When I was diagnosed with ADHD and autism, I was also diagnosed with persistent depression or generalized persistent depression, I forget, and generalized social anxiety disorder. Or was it generalized anxiety disorder? Oh crap, now I'm not sure. But my social anxiety is off the charts. I mean, it is off the charts. If I do well at work because it is a socially prescribed experience. You meet your manager, you shake hands, you say hello in the morning to this, that, the other, and I find that easier to make friends there over a long period of time. I mean, it takes me about a year for me to even get to the point where I'm like, oh, do you want to get a drink? Have lunch? Or I mean, I've been at my current job for almost 2 years, and there's a girl who sat next to me for almost all of it, and a couple of times in 2 years she said, we should get a drink, or we should, and then I don't know what to do with that. So if in that moment, please tell me, if you're listening and you know, please help me. If someone says at work, we should get a drink sometime, am I supposed to sit and wait on that and not ask her right then, and kind of in a week or two hit her up by DM or text or in person and say, hey, you know that drink you mentioned? Would you like to maybe sometime do this, da-da-da-da-da? Or am I supposed to, in that moment, say, oh, I would love that. What are you doing next Thursday? Or something. What am I supposed to do with that? I feel like, I've said, oh, that would be great. But then she's waiting for me, I think, because she brought it up originally. So that's kind of given me the open. And it's kind of her saying, but if you don't want to do it, just don't contact me. But when do I do that? And then if you leave it too long, it's weird, right? Like it's already been a week or two. And now I don't know how to approach it. Like, God, I don't know. And I've been in social situations where, the worst one, I think, probably, to be honest, is meeting my husband's friends. So when he has a coworker or workers that he's getting on with, and they want to go out and, bring your wife, it is a nightmare for me. And my brain is cycling right now, and I'm wondering if it's because there's expectation there. They've met my husband, they know him, they've heard about me, there's stuff to live up to, maybe? They're not strangers to both of us, so we're not both going in blind. I'm going in as this kind of, outsider, I guess. And the other thing is, honestly, my husband is terrible at introducing me to people. He'll just be chatting, and I don't know if that's something now I just take it upon myself. I see, we go and meet people, I'm like, I'm Emily, and, but if we were walking down the street, and he stumbled upon a coworker, they would probably be chatting, and then the coworker's kind of like looking side to side with their eyes, looking at me, going like, who is this? Can you introduce me? And then he's not saying anything, and then I'll go, I'm Emily, I'm his wife, and then he's like, oh, I'm sorry. He's not good at facilitating that kind of stuff. He gets social anxiety, he says, but really, I haven't encountered it, in my opinion. But social anxiety, especially, is just, off the charts. I guess all of the anxiety is. And I think with autism, that's a real thing. It's not so much there, I think, for a lot of people with ADHD. I have both. So I get sometimes very extroverted. People have often commented that I'm very standoffish, very closed off. And then once I get to know you, I'm just a chatterbatter. I will not shut up. I will just tell you my whole life story. And I've heard people say like, wow, she's like really opening up. This is okay. Or like, oh, you are cool. I've had people say like really backhanded compliments like, yeah, I thought you were really weird, but you are cool. Or, I thought you were an asshole. Oh, sorry. Beep. I thought you were a bitch, but actually you're quite nice and I want to be friends with you. Just very much like, didn't realize at the beginning that I'm funny, I'm open, I'm, exciting, eccentric, have a lot of information stored up here I can tell you about. So definitely an issue for me, always has been. I think it always will be. This isn't something, autism isn't something you can just cure with a medication. So I don't think, I've had some medications in the past. You can listen to that on some of my previous episodes. But social anxiety is part of the engaging with people that autistic people really struggle with. And I've just kind of accepted I'm always going to. And just try to kind of mitigate that in certain ways. And sometimes you can't mitigate it. But if you're going to meet new people, here's some advice. Be comfortable. And by comfortable, I mean like wear clothing that is comfortable for you. The worst thing is going to be you've got a turtleneck on that you're pulling at. You're wearing those boots you really love, but they scratch your ankle and, whatever. Wear what is comfortable for you so that you feel the most comfortable you can without the social anxiety aspect. So before you have to enter all the anxiety, enter the arena of communicating with a new person, make sure you're wearing comfortable clothes. If you don't like makeup, don't put makeup on. Wear your hair how you want to. Maybe bring a comfort snack. Ones that really fit well are coffees and teas, right? If you're just like hanging out with your matcha, I said matcha because that's what I love, or your Starbies or whatever, that's really common. So, and it's something, also holding something. Here's a tip from the royal family. FYI. You'll see oftentimes that the wives of the king and princes, whoever, Meghan Markle and Kate married William, Kate, royal lady, whatever, they hold purses in both hands in front of them. And that actually stops people approaching them for a handshake, because with royal protocol, there's certain times they're not allowed to shake people's hands. And so they hold these purses with two hands in front of their body so that people don't approach them for a handshake. You can do that. Have your coffee and hold it with both hands and, kind of nod at people. I do a nice little nod and a bow. The royal family does that often when they're not allowed or not supposed to shake hands. So that's my tip from me to you. Be super comfortable. And if you don't want hugs and you don't, some people might reach out and hug you anyway, but hold something. Pretend you're reading a book and you have it in two hands. But the best one is a drink, really, to be honest. The second autistic trait that is described under psychological is perceived by others as moody and prone to bouts of depression. Absolutely agree with this. I am prone to bouts of depression, so being perceived to be prone to bouts of depression is true. You perceive it, and it is true. The one that really gets me is the moody thing. I've always been seen as moody by my own family, and I'm a Gemini, and when okay, just disclaimer, I don't believe in horoscopes. I think any horoscope you can read, you can relate it to your own life, and that's not necessarily a bad thing if it gives you insight, but I don't believe that it's really tapping into some kind of magical space magic or whatever. And so when I tell people I'm a Gemini, which Gemini is the twins, and you're seen as not two-faced, but that you can have a split personality. That's what the Gemini personality is. And for people who believe in horoscopes, when I say I'm a Gemini, they're like, oh, totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Because I can go from very happy, very excitable, very hyperactive, to I just experienced RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria, or I just experienced a sensory issue that I don't enjoy, and I can literally go, just snap. I can go from laughing to, no, get up, get off me, don't touch, shut up, don't leave me alone, stop, I don't want to be around you. That is really common and always has been for me. I realized when I was younger, I was always moody when I woke up. Always moody. And I realize why now. I remember specifically these times where I would fall asleep at my grandparents' house, and there were more people in there, and my grandmother liked to clean, and they would get up early, and they would wake me up in this kind of barrage of Nan's vacuuming, you gotta get up, and I'd be so moody. And now I'm realizing it's that sensory issue. You wake up, they've pulled the curtains open, they're talking at you, there's loud sounds from the TV or a vacuum, they're telling you to get up, they're telling you to eat. It's just a lot. And so the bathroom, I've spoken about this before, has always been my sanctuary for that. If I'm feeling moody, feeling overexposed, overstimulated, I go lock myself in a bathroom. Most people won't approach you if you lock yourself in a bathroom, because you might be, pooping or something. So they just leave you in there and just let you, be. And it's a safe, quiet space. I'll run the tap so it just drowns everything out. Or I'll pretend to take a shower or take a shower. But being moody, and I love that they said perceived by others as moody, because you're labeled as moody, and it's, what does that mean? Moody? I'm just a person who's oscillates between moods. Everyone does that. Everyone's happy, sad, lonely, quiet, excitable. We all do that. But I think in people who are autistic and neurodivergent people, that we oscillate between those feelings rather quickly, so that you can go very quickly from I'm very happy to I'm very unhappy, or vice versa, or I'm very comfortable to I'm very uncomfortable. And that can create anger, depression, quietness, and kind of feelings that people are like, oh, you're really going through it, which is true, that I have been perceived that way, and I frickin' hate it. Okay, and number 3, may have been diagnosed with mood disorders such as bipolar or personality disorders such as borderline or narcissistic personality disorder before autism was discovered. This is not true for me. That being said, I think I had a very unique experience. I was diagnosed in 2020 when I was 34 years old. I had been looking for answers for a very long time. I hadn't gone to therapy. I'd gone once or twice through discounted services because in the US, my insurance was not very good. And the one time I really tried to commit to it, they told me that each meeting with the therapist appointment would be $700. And I said, well, you're crazy, so goodbye and no. So I've done it very infrequently before I was diagnosed, but if you listen to my first episode that I ever did on this podcast, I talk about how and why I was diagnosed. And I was very fortunate and lucky. I didn't know, but I thought I might have ADHD. And so I reached out to a psychologist, a therapist, who specialized particularly, it was hard to find a therapist who specialized in adults in my area, but she specialized in autistic and ADHD children, in bereavement. I wanted to deal with some issues around my father dying when I was 4 years old, with abuse, which I'd experienced. And so she actually recognized in me, she was pretty sure I had ADHD before I was assessed. And she asked me if I'd ever considered if I had autism based on a couple of different things that I said. I told her that I didn't respond to my name when I was a child, which is a classic sign of autism. I had to have a hearing test, was found out that my hearing was perfect, labeled difficult, so on and so forth, lost in the system, not diagnosed till I was 34. Here's what I will say. So I had a great experience, was diagnosed 3 to 4 months after I started therapy. It was suggested, went to a neuropsych, 3-month waiting list, went to a psychiatrist, blah, blah, diagnosed, assessed, diagnosed, done. I, for a long time, was worried, and not because I'm saying it's worse than what I have, but because I was worried about having anything. I was worried that I was bipolar. The reason for that is my grandmother has been diagnosed bipolar. Again, if you've listened to my episodes, you'll know that I'm estranged from my family, my biological direct family right now. And so I don't know if that has changed, but she was very up and down when I was a child. She was very either hyperactive and living up here, and by up here, my hand is like 2 feet above my head right now, just living large, very excitable, very happy. Or I remember, her face was in her salad. I mean, literally, she would be sitting at dinner with her head hung almost touching the food, picking at food, not eating. It was very one way or another, right? And so this was the 90s when she was diagnosed. They diagnosed her initially, what did they call it? I can't even think what it's called right now, but she basically had a breakdown. And they diagnosed her with bipolar because she was up and down. And so for a long time, I thought I might have bipolar. If you have a relative who's bipolar, it's more likely that you have it. It's passed down, or I don't want to say passed down. I'm not sure. But it's usually women. Is it usually women? God, now I don't remember. But if if your mom or your grandma has bipolar and you're a woman, you very well might end up bipolar. So I thought I might be bipolar, and I would read all the WebMD shit. Wow, sorry. I am on I don't know what's happening today. I'm feeling real loosey-goosey, I think. But I would read all of the stuff online, what are the symptoms? This, all the websites, of course, because you get hyper-obsessed about it. And I would do all of these silly surveys online, which I say silly, they do help you to get a bit of perspective. Because if you take a test and it's like, okay, you're 1% bipolar, it's like, okay, maybe I don't have it. And so when I would do these tests and look at these symptoms, it kind of fit, but it kind of didn't. It honestly didn't feel right, but I was scared I did have it. I And this just speaks to the society we live in and the biases that we carry, because I was scared to have bipolar because of what I thought I knew about it. I thought it was very difficult to live with. Not to say that it isn't, but I thought, this was kind of a death sentence in a way for your mental health to be diagnosed bipolar. That you have to be on medication, and even then, that you're kind of maybe even a danger to society. I mean, I really didn't know what it was, but I knew it was this hyper kind of up and down emotional thing. And I thought I might have it. And now, looking back, and like I said, I'm not diagnosing my grandmother. We haven't been in touch for a long time. Maybe she's been re-diagnosed. Maybe it's been confirmed she has bipolar. I don't know. I'm wondering now if my grandmother is not bipolar, but at least has ADHD. I don't think she's autistic. I could be totally wrong. She could be autistic and ADHD. But her cycling of emotion, her hyperactivity, her depression, she has severe RSD really badly. I'm really wondering if she has ADHD and it's not bipolar. My mom, I don't think's ever been diagnosed with anything, but she definitely at least has ADHD, just because we are mirror images of each other. It's so insane. So no, I have not experienced that, and I think it's because I'm very lucky. I am very, very lucky that I found a therapist, and therapists. I worked with a psychologist, a neuropsychologist, and a psychiatrist, all women who believed me. Who, when I said this is what I experienced, they believed that that's what I experienced. And they really understood that adult women are not diagnosed properly. So, haven't experienced it personally. Lucky that I haven't. Wondering about my grandmother, for sure. All right, let's see, 1, 2, 3, the fourth thing on here, autistic trait for females, under psychological. Fears rejection intensely and tries to manage how other people feel to avoid it. Oh my gosh, if this doesn't hit home like a freight train through my body. Rejection can come in many different ways. People telling you you're not good enough for this. You made a mistake at work. I talked about the social anxiety thing. My coworker saying, let's get drinks sometime, and me saying, would you like to? And her going, no, or I'm not available. I mean, I fear it and don't like to experience it. I remember a couple of jobs ago working with a woman that I thought, we were getting on well. We were vibing at work. This was during COVID. So we were literally just walking around together at work in this museum that I worked at where no one was. It was empty all day. We had nothing to do except talk to each other. And for months we engaged. She had talked about maybe having ADHD. I told her I was going to get assessed. And I remember a pier, the new pier that goes out into the ocean, had opened where I live. And we were talking about it. And she'd said, oh, I really want to go out and see it one night. And I guess I took that as maybe an invitation. I don't know. And I said, if you want, I'd love to go hang out with you on the pier sometime. And she all of a sudden clammed up, and it was clear she wasn't offering it to me as an invitation. And that actually, I didn't fear rejection in that moment because I was so comfortable. I thought she was like, yeah, let's hang. I thought that's what she was saying and kind of opening that door, but she wasn't. She clearly wasn't once I said, oh, let's hang. And things like that, because I don't read situations correctly, I feel like. So then I'm afraid, like I talked about with this girl, let's get a drink. Now I don't know. When do I mention let's get a drink? You want to get a drink tonight? What do we... and I can't do that. I can't be at work and then say, we're getting off in 10 minutes, want to get a drink? That's also horrifying, but also easier to deal with. I don't know. Planning stuff, my nightmare. Not planning stuff, my nightmare? I don't know. But my mom always said this growing up, and she would actually make fun of me for it. So it's also a little bit sensitive. But she would say, like, you cannot criticize Emily. You cannot tell her no. You cannot, like you can't, if anyone says anything that isn't overwhelmingly positive, I see it as a full-fledged rejection of everything that I am, everything I'm trying to be, and just really don't react well to it. I struggle with that. I kind of lump criticism in there with it because I feel like if I'm criticized, I feel like that's a rejection almost. Like, I cannot stand work reviews. I'm an overachiever, so they usually go very well. But there are work reviews where they're going very well, but then there's always like but you could be a little bit more organized. And it's literally, I could stab myself in the eye in that moment, burst into tears, and run off a cliff. It's so bad. I don't know how to deal with that. And the tries to manage how other people feel to avoid it, I don't even understand what that means. I don't know if that's my autism coming through here, but tries to manage how other people feel to avoid being rejected. Is that kind of doing what they need? Like ingratiating yourself to them, not showing who you really are. Like if someone says, I love sci-fi movies, but you don't, instead of saying, I'm good, you say, sure, let's do it. I'm not really sure. Is that what it is? Well, maybe. But yeah, super relate to that. Ugh, hate that. And the final one is has an unstable sense of self, perhaps highly dependent on the opinions of others. Oof, I feel like I've just been talking about this. I don't know who I am in a lot of ways. I don't know how I'm perceived. I don't know. I know that I'm a good person who loves art and loves to eat food. But beyond that, I don't really know who I am. I don't really know how I come across. And see, you hear me talking about it. I'm talking about how other people perceive me. I'm like, how do people view me? How do I come across? Which is exactly what I was just stating right there. My unstable view of myself, I don't know why that is. I guess it's a trait of autism. You struggle to recognize emotions. You probably struggle to recognize emotions in yourself, what you're feeling, what you like, what you don't like. And then you rely on other people's opinions, which is not a good idea, guys, for a lot of different reasons. Here's what I will say. Oh man, okay, here we go. Don't rely on other people's opinions, oftentimes, if they don't know you really well and aren't looking out for your best interests. But I just realized this is something I've craved my entire life and still do. You know this, I grew up very poor with a single mom. She didn't graduate high school. My grandfather was a coal miner, her dad. No one in my family. I'm the second person to graduate high school in the family, I believe. Maybe third. First person to go to college. And so I didn't, after the age of 5, no one could help me with homework. I was never advised on, I was advised on some practical stuff. How to have a bank account. My mom thought that was important. How to use a bus. Things like that. But how to plan your career. How to, advice. Is there anyone out there? Because my husband has this. He has 2 parents who know how to freaking give advice. They have lived a life and they know, kind of the paths to take. And I wish I had had that. I wish when I was unsure about, in high school, where did I want to go with my career? I wish I'd had that. People being able to say, well, what you should do is do a degree, then a master's, or you should do an internship, then a this. I have always, ever since I met my husband, I think, felt really like I missed out. Like I kind of floundered. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a journalist. And no one helped me follow through on anything. No one kind of said, do you know what you should do? Do you know what would be a good plan? No one tried to mentor me because they couldn't, because they had no idea. They'd never even graduated high school. They hadn't worked in I don't know, the workforce that isn't retail, cleaning, childcare, window washing. After coal mining, my grandfather was a metal smelter, and then he washed windows for the Kodak headquarters in London for 20 years, 25 years or something. You know, my grandmother was a stay-at-home mom and cleaned. I would go with her to the offices. She would clean. It's so crazy now. I work in an office with cubicles that she used to clean. I don't work in the same office, but the same type of office. And to think that I used to go with her at night and see where she worked, and now I work there. Wow. Unexpected emotion there, but I really feel like I missed out on having a direction in life, and I craved that so much and still do. Crave this, validation from people. You know, I'm an intelligent, special person that, if you've listened to my other episodes, I knew I wanted to be an artist. I knew certain things about myself. But needed someone else to get me there. Needed someone else's opinions to tell me this was the right choice, right? Like, picking the right choice has always been difficult. And maybe because I have put it all on, you have to pick the right choice, the one right choice. And I don't know if there is the one right choice, you know? When one window, you know, they talk about when one door closes, another one opens. Here's what really happens. That when a door opens and you walk through it, 20 other doors close. You decide to become a doctor. Well, you're probably never going to be an artist. You're never going to be a farmer. You're never going to be a sports athlete. A lot of doors close when you choose the path. When you choose that one path you're going to take, a lot of other things fall away. And I've been looking for that perfect path, and I just don't think it exists. I don't think it exists for anybody. And so I've put pressure on myself and the people around me to help me find that path. And I think the life you live is a convergence of many paths that you didn't know you were going to take. I kind of hate to talk about this because people like her, people don't. Jada Pinkett Smith, The Red Table talk show, fallen a bit from grace since the whole Will Smith slap and, marriage stuff they've gone through. But she's talked about this, and her daughter cried with her because her dream was always to have a farm, I believe in Baltimore, where she grew up, and live, once she got famous, she was like, I'm going to take my money, live on a farm. And actually what ended up happening is she met Will Smith, fell in love with him, married him, moved to LA, and that's never going to be a thing that happens. She has 2 kids, she has a movie career, she's settled down, and her daughter, said, I wish you could have had that life. And Jada Pinkett Smith said, well, no, because if I had that life, I wouldn't have you. And I wouldn't have my movie career. And I wouldn't have all of this stuff. And I wonder how she made that decision. Was that just a decision she made that she was going to do that? Or did she get advice from people? I haven't had therapists before I was 34. I didn't go to church. I haven't had that community, which I don't. If you go to church, that's fine. I don't like going to church. I'm not religious. I'm an atheist. And it's not a comfortable place for me. But I didn't have that community of people where you have advisors that are telling you, this is what could work for you. I know you, and this is who you could be? I remember my mother-in-law told me she went to dental school, which is boring for a lot of people. And the idea of going to dental school and having to touch teeth and gross. But she was in dental school for, I think, a couple of years. And her advisor said to her, you need to be a doctor. You need to be a doctor. And she became a doctor. She left dental school, went to medical school, became a doctor. And I so crave the opinions of others to really get me on the path that I want to go on. And I don't know how to get to the point where I really trust myself, because there are certain things where I really, when I came to America, I knew that's what I wanted to do. But when I'm floundering, it's hard for me to find the path. And I really wish I had other people to help me. And I guess the last thing of saying, perhaps highly dependent on the opinions of others, I would say yes, hell yes. Definitely highly dependent on the opinions of others. And I guess I really crave it, but maybe I wish I wasn't, I don't know. That's been a struggle for me. And it's a struggle going forward, too. That I've decided, I'm going to put everything into this podcast. I've decided that when I'm done with school next year, with my graduate program, I'm going to write my book. But I tend to get into these spaces and then second guess myself without the support of others. And, like I said, I really crave it, but wish I didn't sometimes. If you experience that, I would love to hear from you, because it's difficult, for sure. All right, so those are all the psychological female autistic traits outlined in Unmasking Autism by Dr. Devon Price. Next episode is going to be the third of 4th episodes in the series, and we're going to go over the behavioral autistic female traits, so stick around for that. And don't forget, we have the film fixation episode coming out this week. It's going to be Scream for Halloween, duh. And reach out to me. Like I said, hit me up put some reviews out there. I would love that. Then hit me up on social. I've had a couple of people do that. It's all in the show notes, but I'm basically under My Brain is a Wonderland everywhere. I would love to hear from you. And I'm excited to be with you again on My Brain is a Wonderland next week, season 2.